Okay, hello. I hope that people can hear me. Until I see Michael nodding, I will have to find out. We are back after 1 month, and hopefully now you can even see us.
Right.
I'm here with Owen and Michael, helping me to stream a little bit. This is, of course, not the large event that we had 1 month ago. But we thought maybe we give you a little update about what's going on in the development and show you a couple of new scenes from the game and a couple of things we captured for you already, and maybe even some live stuff depending on what kind of questions come up. So we have prepared a couple of topics for today. One of them would be about the geography of the universe, what kind of systems we have. The second topic will be, it's not only limited to that, but just roughly about building in the universe and the modularity of stations, because we saw quite a few questions about this, and thought we could give you a little bit more material on that and a little bit more insight. And the last section will be about the tech behind it, the engine, and some of the improvements we recently made about rendering. So maybe if we start with the beginning, with the scenes about the sector layout, and is audio okay?
Yeah,
Even with music? Cool. Oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, with each section, if each section we are talking about, we also give people the opportunity to ask questions. We have CBJ in the chat. I forgot to mention we have also Ketra and who's the other guy? Sparky. So thanks to everybody helping us with moderating here as well, by the way. And so questions can be filtered, and some of them hopefully we can answer. But we try to do it a little bit by topic. So we start with this rough topic of universe layout, and what you already see here in the background is the map of the game in an X3 style sector, because that I thought was most important, that you guys see that we also have these kind of systems. People were a little bit complaining about all the highways they saw in the footage last month, and I know that not everybody likes highways. I think that's a mistake, and I still believe in the concept of highways for some things, but I also believe that we overdid it with X Rebirth, and so we are making a lot more X3 style sectors and only using highways in, basically in the core of the universe, where there's the highest density of stations, and where the factions, where the races in the universe manage to build those highways already. So in other areas, they, depending on what faction it is, they don't have highways, or they have different types of transportation systems. What you can see on the map also is how big these systems are. And the ones with highways can be bigger, of course, because using the highway you can cross a bigger span, but there can also be some exceptional systems where you really can fly with your normal engines for many minutes until you get to the new gate, to the next gate. But of course, highways, since they can accelerate you a lot faster than that, can bridge even larger distances, and that allows us to make some systems really big. So in contrast to this system here, I also captured a second system. That's the one called highway system. Can you switch to that maybe? Yeah, core. Yeah, it's this one. And I think it also shows the map again. So we have the window open. You hear some noises, but the room is rather small. We need some fresh air here. So this is, I think, a Teladi core system, and it's really densely populated, but still, as you can see here, it can still be very far from one station to another. And by the way, this is also the same system that I'm later using for building of stations. So this, I think when I captured this material, there were you will recognize the same stations again. So you can see the highway now popping in, and near the highway there are lots of stations, and there is one really big Teladi trading stations, but also but also lots of factories separated here. I hope it's going to the map soon, because that was here. So yeah, you can see this is it takes a lot longer. Of course, you can zoom out and get a big picture of the whole system at once, but at some point the map automatically starts grouping stations together. So on this level, which is still not the lowest, you can also zoom in further, of course, especially when you want to see details of stations. But on this level, you can already see the geometry of stations. And when the geometry comes in, then this is actual proper one-to-one scale. That's not necessarily true for icons, of course. Icons can be, are always the same size, no matter how far you zoom in. But that's why they start to be grouped together when you zoom out further. We also maybe I can already quickly talk a little bit about the jump gates and other ways of transportation. People who played the X3 games know that we had in the past also the Terran systems with accelerators, and they were called transorbital accelerators, and we plan to do something similar in some of the systems in this universe as well. So while there are jump gates, there can also be a little bit, in a way they are similar to superhighways, but they are instant. So what you saw in Terran Conflict as transorbital accelerators, and this was developed by a corporation, I think, in the time frame of Albion Prelude, was also spread to some other systems, and I think that these are the ones that we will see in X4. But this is still, under development, and you will see some changes there. This is maybe also an opportunity to talk later a little bit about trading, and because the menu shows this a little bit. Maybe we can take a couple of questions about the whole geometry or universe.
Yeah. Feel free to ask questions about stuff we're talking about. We'll be having people in the chat collect them up, and we'll be picking out some questions to answer.
Was there something, Michael, or do we have?
One, for example, are there unconnected systems that you can find some way that are not part of the gate network?
Well, not completely unconnected. How else would you reach them? Is the is the point. We do not have a jump drive, and it is not planned that we will have a jump drive, because we did consider this and thought long and hard about the advantages and disadvantages of different transportation systems, and the jump drive was always a little bit it's not the nicest solution, because it instantly brings you anywhere, and on the one hand it's nice that you can use it for a very advanced player, but it also can, in the worst case, destroy the whole idea of exploration a little bit. So I think I mentioned last month already that we now have the teleportation as something you develop in the headquarter, and teleportation also is instant, or well, almost instant, but the big difference is, of course, that you can only teleport to a ship that you already have somewhere. So exploration is in no way different. You have to send a ship somewhere to be able to teleport there, and just jumping around is well, you still have to send your ships, and they still need the time to travel there. So that's a big difference. And of course, without a jump drive, there cannot be unconnected systems. So at the moment, that's the situation.
Another one. do we still have to scan entire stations?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, sorry. The question was if there's still the need to scan entire stations, and no, it isn't. The scan gameplay has completely changed. It's not entirely 100% decided yet, but we do not have at the start of the game the same. Yeah, this whole gameplay with flying from info point to info point to collect information for a station. There is still information collection, and you will have to fly, or you have an opportunity to fly over the surface of a station sometimes, but it is not necessary to do that all the time. It's a special thing usually done in missions only, and it works differently. But more on that later. Yeah, are we? Yeah. Any more questions?
Yeah, bro, there's plenty more. Will there be resource collection like using mining ships instead of static stations like mines that were in the previous exploit?
Well, yes,
Clearly,
yeah, of course, we have.
same question.
Oh, sorry. Again, I have to repeat the question. I'm sorry. The question was if there is a resource collection and mining ships and resource collector ships. And yes, the answer is yes. That's a big thing of the game, that you can harvest resources and send mining ships to asteroids. And there are special ships just for that purpose. Unfortunately, we don't have any video material for this topic today, and I don't think we are prepared to just now jump into the game to show that. It's but that's maybe something for another presentation. But there are already quite a lot of unique ships just for this area of gameplay, and that's a big thing for us.
The planets in the systems, do they have other functionality beyond looking pretty?
I think that's something that you can answer yourself, the whole workforce thing. Maybe you can also repeat your question and answer it, Michael, because then I'm not the only one talking here all the time.
So, just hold it. So, on the topic of planets, the planets themselves are not directly influencing it, but we are using the system of workforce. So if we have a system where there's predominantly Paranit placed there, then the workforce that is going to be on stations will be typically Paranit, because they are living there. And of course also the stations will have habitation modules. You can even build some for multiple races, and depending on what the living quarters are for people, that's the people on that station working on that station. This dynamic camera view is amazing.
Pro.
Yeah, and I'd like to hand this back. Maybe Owen, you have anything to add on topic of workforce?
I wasn't listening, to be honest. But yeah, speak of habitation modules,
Yes.
and
Habitation, workforce,
and
I
some
mean, the planets themselves are not directly.
not directly, but we do want certain areas to be attractive, more attractive for workforce. So over time, if you have them in a busy area, you'll build up workforce quicker, and your station production will get a bit more effective. It's essentially building off what we had with the specialist in Rebirth. And yeah, it's a nice little extra thing you can manage on your stations, in addition to just keeping wares stocked for the productions.
But we are a little bit breaking out of our planned order already. Maybe we should move. Yeah, maybe we should move to the building part. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I have to go around here. Maybe we should get a wireless microphone.
Doing it live.
You rolled over my mic. Thank you. Okay, the second section is maybe a better opportunity to talk about workforce. Actually, if we start showing some material about building. So building. Some people in the last month's presentation were saying that they were worried a little bit about station appearance being not so beautiful if stations are modular. And yes, our stations are modular, but that is absolutely not a reason for them not to be pretty at the same time. Maybe you can turn off the camera so people can see the corner. And so here in this video you can see me really building a station. And I cut in between always the actual construction, which of course takes a while and happened later. So I'm cutting between the design phase and the actual construction phase always. And you can, at this time here you see the actual construction of the first module of the station, which is a pier, a dock for capital ships. And this is one part that is oftentimes the same. So now I'm starting to connect other modules, and many of them are like interconnection parts, which are mostly giving you the freedom to connect things in different orientations. But as you can see at the side, I mean, the whole menu is far from finished. You see that there's lots of icons missing, but you see the categories, and in those categories there are production modules and there are storage modules. This is the stuff you need for productions. And there are living sections and and piers. So here these things are connected, and this is again a little later when the station is already being constructed. The reason why this is why stations would hopefully not be in any way affected by this is that in the past our stations were always planned to be modular, and actually they were designed to be modular from the start, at least for the graphic artists, because in X Rebirth and partially also already in the X3 games, artists designed individual production components. At least for productions, that was always our plan and always the way we worked. No, camera is not important. I think people don't want to see us, and it would just overlap in the corner. Yeah. See, this is, by the way, now an interesting point in the construction phase, because I used this 60-degree angle down there, and then you can see that I also can start rotating things freely. This really gives you a lot of freedom in designing stations, and the individual modules, especially for production components and storages, represent the same functionality that they did in the past. So in some, if you did play X Rebirth, you surely have seen production components like the ore refining component with the long conveyor belt and the minerals being burned and processed, and things like this of course are modular, because this is an element of a station which has a certain function, and this is the category you see in the top left, the production components. This is now the first production component I'm connecting here, by the way. This is solar panels, and they of course produce energy, and as you can see I'm connecting them here to this station, and it looks pretty cool when it's built later. So this is, by the way, now the dock for small ships that I'm adding. But first you see the solar panel being constructed, and so yeah, with every module you add, you see how it's being done, and you can rearrange it, you can rotate it, move it, and you can get an overview of what functionality of the station is being added as well. As I said, the menu isn't finished yet because there's some information missing on the right side, which is currently just listing the prices and not yet all the details about constructing. But this is work in progress. Oh, and what's of course most important part now, I think I very soon start also adding more vertical elements, because here this is still more or less two-dimensional and just one level, but the connections with which these modules are being connected are not just in a two-dimensional space. They are of course also to the top and to the bottom, and then you can, if you rotate your camera in this view, you can also move things vertically, and given that the connections are there, connect everything freely, also in many levels. You can stack things, especially with living sections. That's usually how they are designed, like what I did there. In this case, I didn't have to zoom in yet, but of course, if you want to see the details, I think happens a little bit later. But this is now back to the ship docking platform. This is one ship dock for, I think, 1 M ship and 6 S ships. So this gives you already a pretty decent capacity for docking, but you can always add more and design where you place them and things like that freely yourself. But of course, this is one of the necessary components if you want to have a functional station. Usually one dock, 1 storage module, 1 living section, 1 production component. This is kind of like the minimum for a station to function. And also the large pier is a good idea, because without it you can only have M&S ships docking, which is possible, right, Michael?
Yes.
Yeah, because we do now also have in the normal NPC economy a lot more M ship traders, but yet if you want big numbers being moved around, then a pier is usually a good idea. I think on this picture you can already see the living section at the bottom of the station, and the second solar panel. I think, I don't know, I didn't watch the video the whole way all the time while I was talking, but yeah, I think the editing phase also shows you how you can zoom in and rotate and freely edit. So I think this is pretty cool. And another thing that we wanted to show in this section is also how the NPCs then use those same modules to construct their stations freely. I think that is something that we mentioned in the last video, but we didn't really show examples, and people, again, they were worried that freely constructed stations would be very ugly, and I really think the opposite is true. Our stations really look cool, and they are of course more varied than ever before, because they are not designed in many cases, but designed by AI, so to say. But here, by the way, this is a liquid storage module. This and you can see when it clicks into this vertical connection here, this is a relatively limited storage, at least at the moment. Maybe this will change later, but it only has 2 connections. But still, even with only 2 connections, it allows you lots of possibilities, and you can rotate it, of course, and put it anywhere on top of anything else. Maybe we jump to the screenshots section. We made a couple of screenshots of NPC build stations. Yeah, that's the slideshow. And all of those stations, with one exception, Michael can tell us exactly which one it was, basically designed by NPCs, and only one of them is built after a blueprint that we provided. Maybe I give the microphone over to you.
actually passed it already. The very first one was the one that...
It may be a random order, so and if you look there,
Yeah.
then it's tiny.
Yeah.
You better look there.
You say that's apparently one.
Yeah, so this is a Paranid station. It's definitely one of the generated ones. There's a Teladi station, yeah. Actually, they're producing space wheat there. This is a specialist xenon power plant. And this is one not generated station. This is a Paranid shipyard. That was manually designed in that editor that you saw earlier. Yeah, Teladi have these domes for their, especially those habitation modules where the Teladi live, and of the Paranid, the specific shapes here also recognizable. Yeah, this is a shipyard again.
It's randomly shuffling.
Oh yeah, okay, random. Then we can expect to see things again sometimes. Another Paranid production facility, yeah. The randomizer really likes the xenon.
Yeah, so this is I think also pretty nice proof that the stations don't look more generic in than they did when we designed them, because we are doing basically, the NPCs are doing exactly the same that we did in the design phase of X Rebirth. They are put together from modules designed for certain functions. It was only the user interface that limited us from doing more sophisticated design for the users in X Rebirth. And now we, with the map and with the dragging and mouse control, this became possible. So we can do a lot more here. Maybe we also, when we talk about the map, we also switch to the or maybe first let's first see if there are questions specifically for building. So
one that comes up quite a lot is there something unique for the player build, like a headquarters stations of some kind, or anything that doesn't quite fit into this module, so but is special for the player?
yeah, I mean, we are showing you a lot of. The question was, is there anything unique that you build as a player? And yes, of course, there is. The best example is, of course, the player headquarter, which is a unique and special thing you build, and not really from the ground up, but in a very special situation as part of the plot. But there are other. A lot of those modules also that you saw today, they are not immediately available to you if you play the game. You will have to find them first and make them available. So at the beginning of the game, you will be limited to a small subset of modules, and then more and more become available. And of course, many of those more advanced ones and more unique ones will have to be unlocked through missions or through special things in the game.
Can we rearrange station parts after they have been built?
The question was, can we rearrange station parts after they have been built? The question is, yes, you can, but that means they will be torn apart and rebuilt again, because the NPCs are not moving the finished part around. They basically deconstruct it and reconstruct the part that you moved. The deeper question behind that is how expensive this is, and of course the player doesn't really have to pay the full price again when he does that.
No.
Yeah. Maybe you can say something about that.
Yeah. When you build a station and you want to change the plan, then usually that means, if the modules have already been built, that you get to recycle what you currently have, and some of those resources go back towards the next modules you want to build. Maybe we can see some of that in these videos. But yeah, you can redesign whole trees of the station if you decide to change it from producing mainly one product to another one. And there's nothing stopping you changing a normal factory into a shipyard eventually, if you put the right modules on it. Maybe. Yeah. But yeah, it's a pretty flexible system. Things like being able to plan a whole station without having to wait for each module to finish before you go on to the next stage, like it was in Rebirth. And yes, you have a very large area to play in. It's not just maybe 50 modules. You have a whole area where you can put quite a number of modules inside. This is a example of a relatively small build plot, we call it.
Is it? I think this is a relatively big But because you don't see the border yet.
Ah, okay, you
No.
can't see the border yet. That's why.
This is
But no, you can have some.
plot is pretty big, but
Yeah,
the
pretty
plot.
sizable.
Maybe we should say something about the plot anyway. You saw this big ugly yellow block at the beginning when I started building in this video. The look of that design phase will certainly change, but this block is what we call the plot at the moment. So this is basically the space that you get to build your station inside, and this is how you start the whole construction phase. And depending on how many, what dimension this block has, then the editor that you see further on, of course, has more or less space available. And you can also later increase the size of a plot, but it comes with a cost, depending on where you do it. The details of that are not all decided yet, but the idea behind it is that it is more expensive for the player to build near the economic center of our game. So especially near a very attractive highway next to other stations where you get your resources very quickly and where there is a lot of NPCs and a lot of demand for the products that you are making, building will be more expensive because you need to get the plot first. But if you are willing to go a higher risk, go more into an area that is dangerous or very far out where there's not a lot of traffic by NPCs, then you can get it a lot cheaper or maybe even for free. There's not everything has been set in stone yet, but that's the idea behind it.
Maybe another question related to building. If you build the dock areas, can you use them as a garage for storing ships, so especially ship collectors and have a lot of them?
Yeah, the question was about the docks if they can be used also as a garage for ship collectors, and the answer is yes. If you have your own dock, you can also use it as a garage. That's actually one thing that I feel strongly about, that this is also really well presented, because I think people want this experience that you land in your home station and that you see your coolest ships, and that's why the AI should also not store them away so quickly, because every dock has the ability to store away ships, which is important, especially when you have a lot of NPCs visiting. But I want for a player station with a lot of player ships that the player ships get a priority and are more likely not to be stored away. Of course, you can, even if it's stored away, you can always call it back and use it again. But it's of course a lot cooler when you have it standing there on the platform and can just walk right in.
The landing pads, do they have some kind of shield dome, or are we all walking around on the spacesuits? Is there breathable air on the landing pads?
The landing pads, you mean the docks, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the docks.
Yes, they I think this is can even be seen in at least in the videos we showed last time, where I think there was a lot of walking around on the platform. You can see that it has a kind of a field above it that also keeps air inside. So you can walk without a spacesuit. Maybe.
We have plenty of general questions.
Yeah,
So
maybe before we go to the general questions, I think the stuff that at least a little bit loosely fits into this same presentation is the map multi-select stuff. Maybe you can show that video, and I say a little bit about that. Because it's also again back to the map and all of the features that it adds to the game, and especially the ability to manage a fleet. Again, none of that is final. As you can see, some of the menus still look quite ugly, and not all of the functionality is exposed. But what you can see in this video is how you can select multiple ships at once, assign them in groups, like select 10 ships and make them the subordinates of another ship. Tell a group of ships to land on a carrier. Tell the carrier again to attack something, and then it launches its subordinates and so on. So here The blue lines are the commands, and the game is currently, while I was capturing this, was running with Zeta turned on. So it's possible to use the menu while Zeta is turned on, and I think we will leave that. This was a topic we discussed a lot recently, whether Zeta should be more restricted like it used to be in the X3 games, where it always turns off automatically when you approach something, for example, or when you open a menu. But we've made a lot of changes to how Zeta behaves, and so it's very possible to use it with menus and even while walking around on bridges. So you are not walking like like on drugs when you are playing in Zeta. So actually the whole game works pretty well while Zeta is turned on. And this is of course very neat, especially when you're doing something that takes a little bit more time, like making arrangements of a fleet or building a station, that you can directly see everything also with a higher speed. This was, by the way, a carrier launching ships. I have another video of just that, but I think I'll show it a little later. Again, all of that isn't final, and it's the movements especially that you see in the video are can be improved. But you see this is I think there was a ship launching other ships. Also the amount of information that is visible here on the map, you can always change that. Sometimes it looks a little bit ugly when too many text lines are overlapping. Again, we are still working with the presentation, but most importantly, you as a user can always turn this on and off. By the way, there's a lot of missiles flying there in the lower right corner here, and I think this is now and now the carrier is launching ships here. You see the carrier was ordered to attack that group and then launched a lot of ships, so this is pretty cool. But again, the launching sequence will look nicer later, and many other things that we are going to improve. Any more questions in this about the map maybe?
Not directly the map, but related to the whole ordering stuff. Can we get hotkeys for assigning commands like attack or something, so they can be easily done without much clicking, but just use a hotkey to attack something?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure this can be done. We don't have it yet, right? I mean, I have to repeat the question again. The question was, can we have hotkeys on the map? And while yes, we do have a lot of flexibility with mapping keys, there are no hotkeys specifically for the actions on the map, because you can do everything with the context menu always. And at the moment, this is our focus, to make everything really fast with the mouse control, because that's that is what works for everybody and not just for the super experienced player. But I'm pretty sure we can add hotkeys later, and that is much easier than double mouse interface. Here I'm using the filter, by the way. You can see with the big button at the top, it turns off all the filters, and if you go in the lines below, you turn on individual parts of that. So while the big button turns on a whole area like trade, inside trade you can turn on individual elements of trade information. And sorry.
There's on the top of the building. Can a station build itself, or do you always need a construction vessel?
The question was how stations are built technically. Is it the station that builds itself, or is there any kind of construction device? And it is the latter. There are construction vessels, and they can be hired. You don't have to own it yourself, and even NPCs hire them just like the player does. So there's basically, they are like service providers flying through the universe. You when you set up a plot, you can hire the construction vessel. It comes in, and the plot has a certain space where it stores resources, where you can store resources, or NPCs do so as well, that are needed for building. And then the construction vessel comes in and executes that. Again, how exactly this is presented will definitely change a lot, because we did show this a little bit in this video, but we are still working on all of this building visualization, but this principal functionality will remain like that. So the construction vessel is the one that executes it.
You already mentioned the cost for plots. Interesting question that came up. If you come in with a big fleet, can you take plots by force?
The question was if you always have to pay for a lot, or if you can also take over a lot by force if you have a large fleet behind you. And the answer to that is it's actually not even necessary to use force. You always have the choice to place a lot plot. Oh, this is lot and plot. Lot is the thing that you put stuff in, and the plot is the place. Anyway, yeah, you can always place a plot in a sector and do so without a license, but that is not liked by the races. So basically the same mechanism that you see in this video for a peaceful economic exploration and building, where you build just a normal factory, this same user interface and the same building mechanics can also be used for building a military outpost, and even for an invasion into an enemy territory. And of course you don't need to ask for permission if you do that. You go there and you build. But that is seen as a threat by the other race. And the game doesn't distinguish between doing this for military outpost or for economic stations. So in theory you can also go into the middle of the Argon territory and just start building a station, an economic station. But if you do this without a license, then and the Argon see you, which is condition number 2, then they will attack you, and that will of course lead to you suffering a loss in reputation. So it's a question if you want to do that or where you want to do that.
Is the map top-down view only, or can it be rotated to an axis view?
Yeah, it can freely be rotated. It's I'm not doing this in this video much, but you can see that it is 3-dimensional, and I think, didn't I show that in the other? I'm not sure. Maybe, yeah. Yes, it is. So we can only leave it with that answer. I'm sorry that I didn't put that more in this video. I just realized it when I watched the building video as well, that I'm not rotating the camera a lot, because of course top-down view is the most useful most of the time, but especially when the station you are constructing becomes more sophisticated, then you will rotate the camera, because then the stacking, layering of the station becomes more important. And yeah, with normal strategic map like this, it is the top-down view is really the one that you use most.
On the teleportation map, can you teleport to stations, and only player stations or even NPC stations?
The question is about teleportation, and can the player only teleport to ships, or can you also teleport to stations, and if so, also only to player stations? Yes, the player can teleport also to stations, and yes, he can even teleport to NPC stations. The limitation is with the range. We are thinking about, I think we mentioned that also already last month, that the range has to be extended, and that is a big part of the plot of the game via research in the player headquarter. But once you have stations in range, then you can teleport to them. Maybe we move on anyway, because we are running out of time. We have this last section about the technology, and then maybe we have a little bit more time after that. So the last section for today that we planned was about the engine of the game, and we wanted to show a couple of clips that show our new graphic engine. So this is about, I think we mentioned that already last month, Vulkan. When we made the video for last month, we were actually internally still using our old graphic engine, which is based on OpenGL. And while the Vulkan engine was, of course, already developed very far, because it's already being used for X Rebirth VR edition, and during the last month we made the switch to Vulkan also now for X4. So what you see in this video and today, from all of the clips you saw today, I think 90% of the material was now captured with the Vulkan engine, and yeah, that changes with the look and the shaders as well, of course. But for us, the OpenGL engine was a very neat thing to have, because it allowed us that we could actually work on the gameplay and on the whole design of the game a lot earlier, because yeah. Oh, and here the video is showing something else that was a little bit criticized last month, and that's the colors of the game. The game appeared to be too colorful for some people's taste, and again, not everything is final. There are assets, many assets are actually not final, but there's a lot of placeholders still in. I think you could see that in the material last month, where a couple of turrets, for example, are completely untextured. Lots of stuff like that. But what we also added during the last month is color correction. So this is the most extreme case here. I just switched just to show it off to a profile which completely desaturates the game. It's so this is almost black and white now. There can be other profiles, and they change the appearance of the game. But this would be a level on top of what we do on the asset level. So there's of course improvements happening on the asset level, and then you have the ability to change to different profiles of look. Yeah. So this is just a couple of scenes on the platform again, and about taking over a ship. Maybe some more. Yeah, if there are questions about the engine and the technology or the Vulkan rendering or anything regarding the engine, then maybe this would be a good place to ask those questions.
There's one question that is asking, is the game multi-threaded?
Oh yes, yeah, the game is multi-threaded, and that was, I mean, this was actually a long time ago when we were working on, when we started working on X Rebirth. This was a very big deal for us to make an engine, to start developing an engine that is multi-threaded. And with X Rebirth we struggled a lot, and we designed a lot of new technology. Yeah, we had problems with it. I don't have to mention that. And that X Rebirth did have a lot of problems on release. But yes, I think by now we are getting the rewards of all of this new technology and all of the things and the changes we did over the year. Yes, the X4 engine is completely multi-threaded and from scratch.
I'm not seeing so many tech questions in my list.
Yeah, we only have 10 more minutes anyway, so by our plan this would be the time for the open questions.
Oh yeah. The general gameplay list questions is extensive.
What did we not show yet? I'm looking if there was anything that we didn't show.
Carrier launch?
Yeah, the carrier launch. It was actually included in the other video, but no, it's okay. Michael?
Yeah. Boosting. Is the boost tied to the shields again, or is there some kind of fuel for boosting, or
Subject should change.
Yeah, exactly. Subject to change. The question was about boosting. Is the boost duration and intensity bound to the shield energy? And to be honest, we are not sure. We this is one of our development focuses for the next month, probably, maybe in 2 months. It's a little bit subject to change at the moment because we are moving a couple of tasks around, but it's definitely on our list to work on that. Currently it is based on the shield energy, but this will probably change. There's yeah.
will there be equipment docks for capital ships? Yes.
Will there be equipment docks for capital ships? And the answer is yes. Yeah.
For any ship. Will there still be mass traffic trading?
Will there still be mass traffic trading? What do you mean with mass traffic trading? We do use the mass traffic system. So there are mass traffic ships. They make they do also we use this system also for transportation of wares between capital ships and stations, for example. So if that is the question, then yes.
The system also still works for zones, for ships, stations in
You
the
want
same
to say
zone.
something?
Yeah, okay.
A quick addendum on the mass traffic. Trading between stations that are in the same logical zone in the game still is working via mass traffic. That's possible and works. Need another one?
I'm trying to read some questions myself, but it's hard to answer and speak while reading.
How are the modding capabilities compared to X Rebirth?
How extensive are the modding capabilities compared to X Rebirth? Well, to be honest, we don't know yet, but we are doing what we can to make everything possible. That's what we tried with X Rebirth, and that's what we definitely try with X4. So I think it is safe to say they will be at least as good, if not better.
What about crew or workforce for stations that are in sectors where there's no one there, no planets, nothing, no natural inhabitants?
Well, if there is nothing there, then it will be harder to get workforce. That is the idea. And sometimes, well, that will be a limit, but it can be it will of course have to come with advantages in other areas. So where we make it hard to operate a station, usually there must be a benefit on the other side. So of course, the universe is very diverse, and there can be, and everything can exist, but of course it should always be possible to get workforce one way or the other, but it can be a big difference in how fast.
Here's a fun one. Why Foundations as a name?
Oh, it's a fun one.
I think some people get confused because of the two different uses of the word foundations. I think some people maybe think foundation like a corporation or a charity, where we're more thinking of the building foundation, something we build off, and what the races in the universe are building off. They're still recovering from all the gates shut down, and they're finally getting on their feet. And yeah, it was once it was suggested, it really shot up to the top of the list.
Yeah, it's funny how we choose names. It's it was not long before the presentation actually that we had a long list of possible names, and yeah, some people liked some, but there was no name that everybody liked. And once that we found this name, everybody seemed to like it, partially for different reasons. Some but it's what I like about names for X games is always that they leave some things to interpretation, just like the X itself, because the game is, I think, if it stands for anything, then it stands for the freedom, and that the game can be different things for different people. So
Will X4 introduce new ship classes?
will X4 introduce new ship classes? Owen wants to say something.
Well, by the classes, we have many different purposes for ships. Things like carriers, we want to have better carrier behaviors. So you can't just have a ship, a big capital ship with docks, and call it a carrier. We want it to have real AI behavior where you can send it in and you know that it's going to be sensible with launching fighters, staying out of range of a destroyer class, things like that. So yeah, we want to better specialize the ships that we have. But of course, because it's an X game, you can use ships in a multitude of different ways. There's always a bit of crossover, whether you can have, like now, you can have fighter ships with small cargo bays, if that's how you want to start your game. Just do a little bit of trading in between fighting. So yeah, it's a lot more diverse than it was in X Rebirth, with a lot of different crossovers.
Yeah, it's always a small. Yeah, it's always a little bit of a compromise between ships that are specific for a purpose and and on the other hand, still allowing the player what we call a hybrid ships, where you can actually take a ship and change its purpose by equipping it with different things. So it's a compromise between the two, but the class, there are definitely new classes and different classes. Michael?
A question that in various forms comes up again and again is it's been answered in other questions, but can we clearly say that we can take over sectors and claim them?
The question is if sector takeover will be in the game or not, and
Especially in its start launch.
it looks likely, I think, but I wouldn't want to promise something that isn't in yet. So, but what I just said before about the lot and the plot, not the lot, damn it. The plot, hostile plot placement is already a big step in this direction, and basically you are attacking a sector that way, and you are attacking the faction as soon as you get detected by them. And in a way, this is a sector takeover already. We do not currently have the mechanisms to declare a sector your own. So
Not for the player.
not for the player. NPCs do that already.
Yes.
That's an important thing. But I think it's possible that we make that last step as well. But I don't want to promise anything that is not in yet. So
The map shows everything that is seamless, the transition between sectors. Is it possible to fly from one sector to another sector directly, skipping any gates?
the map shows seamless movements between sectors and between clusters and between gates. You can zoom around and scroll around. The question was, can you also directly fly from one sector to another? There are no borders between zones within a sector, and but actually when flying from it definitely is not possible to fly from a cluster to another cluster, from a system to another system. That's like the solar systems. The coordinate ranges of those are completely out of the league. This isn't possible. With sectors, I think it is practically impossible. Is it? Am I saying something wrong here?
At this time,
Yeah, it's not really possible, and it would take a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the main reason why we don't do it.
Yeah. So it's practically impossible, but it's not theoretically impossible. Anyway, I think the relevant part, or the gameplay relevant section of that, is you can fly beyond the gates as far as you like, and the map adapts to that. That is, it zooms out further and further. So basically, what you see as one system on your map can change, and the sizes of systems and also the sizes of sectors can be dramatically different from sector to sector, from system to system. That's so just because it appears equal in size when you zoom out and see multiple systems doesn't mean they are equal in size.
with absence of the jump drive, how do capital ships move between sectors?
The question was, with the absence of the jump drive, how do capital ships move between sectors? And the answer is, well, they fly through gates, they fly through highways, and they will also use the accelerator. So they will use this, and they have boost drives, of course. So they
Only the
large ones. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why we went with transporters and not having the jump drive, was that we want the player to be a bit more tactical with placement of units across the map, not having to just say, okay, I have a fleet of capital ships, I can fill them with energy and go anywhere instantly. We really want, well, we also don't want that for the NPCs as well, because that takes away from the strategic value of, you block a gate, you try and stop them making an advance, and if they can just jump behind you, then it's very tricky to control, and it really does add to thinking, where do I put things, am I missing any areas that they can get in? And yeah, I'm enjoying, looking forward to really trying to figure out how to stop the AI and expand myself, things like that. and seeing what the NPCs do with each other.
Yeah. The hour is over. Do we have some really, really important question that we have to fill in? Otherwise, I think we have to slowly say goodbye.
Questions, maybe one, because it's easy to answer. What about the joystick options, especially for joysticks that have many, many buttons? What's the word on the support for those?
Yeah, we support them. We totally do. We did a lot. I mean, yes, sorry, it wasn't the joystick support wasn't great at the launch of X Rebirth. We worked on that a lot recently, also for X Rebirth. We added a lot with VR Edition and also ported that back to X Rebirth. So there is actually an update coming, I think, with the next update of X Rebirth VR Edition, and also then with the next patch for X Rebirth. That includes already the also default profiles for something like HOTAS systems, but mapping is possible for a while already, and this is not limited. You can basically map as many buttons as you like, and I think we now have like 8 devices, so lots of options for really sophisticated joystick setups. Okay. I think that's enough for one day and for 1 month. We will see when we can do this the next time. But I think it was fun today. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you again with the next presentation. And thanks for staying tuned.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.